Yo, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Zevi here, and I am back at it again to drop part 3 for What If Deku Was Meruem's Reincarnation. The last two parts have been getting so much support, it's just insane. I appreciate every single one of you guys who likes and comments and shares the video around. It really does help, and I really do appreciate it. That being said, check out the 3 links I have down in the description. One being my thumbnail maker, the other my Discord server, and my brand new channel, The Akatsuki, where it features Rogex, Izukage, and Phoenix Sani. We all drop what ifs there, and we will be dropping part 2s for those series very soon. That being said, though, we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Okay, so we're just going to be kicking this story off right after where we had left off. At this current moment, Deku basically got to the USJ and 13 was giving her instructions. At this point, All Might and Aizawa would proceed to start helping out the students with the USJ stuff, and since there would really be no villains, there's really no real material for me to cover here. I mean, there's not really much to say. The only real thing that happens in this version is that everybody ends up having a pretty good time, and that's pretty much all I can say for what's been going on in this part. That being said, though, they basically go back to school and they proceed to have a normal school week, to which everything is just kind of blandish, I guess you could say. There's not really anything that happens other than, you know, all the students basically get told about the UA's festival 1 week earlier than in canon, meaning that they have 1 week to prepare rather than the 1 and 2 days that they actually had. Although I feel like the 2-week break that they had, or no, the 1 week break was actually a little more helpful, just due to the fact that, I mean, you get 2 weeks rather than, you know, like 1 week in school where you only get like half of the day to train and stuff like that. Anyways, with that being said, the people from the other classrooms would of course still end up coming to UA, and this would lead to Bakugo calling everybody else's extras. Everybody else would basically have their normal replies, and this is when, you know, everybody would kind of just leave UA. Instead of Deku being the one who apologizes on Bakugo's behalf, Uraraka is actually the one who steps up and just says, hey, he's a little bit of a hothead. He didn't mean what he said. Like, we're not all like him. And, you know, all that basically happens. And since they didn't really have the USJ attack, many of the classes that arrived there aren't there. The only people who are present is Shinso and Class 1B. So that is a little bit of a minor change, but nothing too drastic. That being said, after all that basically happens, we are now going to be cutting on over to the side of Nezu. At this point, they would be holding a meeting with the teachers, discussing whether Deku should or shouldn't be allowed to even take place in the USJ. A lot of people start saying that he shouldn't, just due to the fact that the kid's already more powerful than All Might. If we really wanted to, he could throw him out into the streets and he'd be like the #1 hero in about 1 year or less. And a lot of people would start agreeing with that notion. They would say he lacks experience, but power, nobody can contest him with that. People would just start talking about Deku. Some would praise him, and some people would say that he's too strong for their own good. And, you know, it would just kind of be like divided in terms of like people saying he should and he shouldn't. Some people would say that they should let him take part because it would just show people that UA is a formidable place and that they have a future #1 hero in their ranks. But after all this, Nezu kind of just did that as a formality. You know, he was gonna let Deku in either way because that's his boy. Come on now, like, he can't just tell Deku like, oh yeah, bro, by the way, you know, I know we're drinking tea and all, but you kind of can't participate. And Deku would just be like, bruh, like that's not it. Ultimately, Nezu would say, hell yeah, he can come in, that's my boy. And, you know, everybody would kind of just be forced to agree, just due to the fact that, I mean, he's literally the principal. Plus, half of the other people thought it was a good idea. So by the end of everything would be all good. And at the end of class, Deku would actually be called in by Nezu to kind of talk for a little bit. He would call in Deku and ask him if he can, you know, come in after school and they can just talk about some stuff. Nezu would then begin to talk to Deku about the meeting, and he would explain to Deku that some heroes would actually think that Deku is perfectly ready to go out into the big streets. He would ask Deku if he thinks that's true. And Deku would say that, you know, it is true. You know, he could probably just watch a hero do his normal stuff, and from that he could probably create a successful agency, but that's not really his goal. So he would say that that's not really what he wants to do. So to stay in UA, you know, he kind of wants to go through things and, you know, do things the right way, I guess you could say. So people don't say, oh, you know, he cheated his way, he's just too strong, you know. And that's kind of what Deku and Nezu were talking about. Now, at this current moment as well, other stuff is actually going down on the villain side of things. If you guys do remember from the last part, the fact that there is no USJ attack and the fact that nothing ended up happening means that a lot of the soldiers and like just small time villains that they have are actually usable. A lot of the small time thugs are actually, in their ranks. And this would actually lead to All For One, kind of working on more high end nomus, as well as working on recruiting one more member to the League of Villains. This villain being Stain. And due to the fact that this is happening before Ida's brother can ever get injured, Stain would end up joining the League of Villains and not injure his brother or, Ida's brother, just because he's not going to be out on the streets this day. He's actually going to be training Shigaraki due to the fact that All For One actually told that to Stain. And in exchange for that, he would give him a quirk. Now this quirk would be a sort of danger sense for Stain. It would amplify his ability to dodge attacks, kind of in the same way that Deku can in the manga. And he would recruit him for the attack on the heroes, students, and All Might in the USJ. If All For One's going to throw an attack, it's going to be on full scale. So yeah, due to this, Ida's brother's good, and the villains are pretty much planning an attack. That's pretty much all that's really going on in terms of stuff right now. Now, this is when we're just going to skip on over to about 3 days before the UA little attack is actually going to happen at the UA Sports Festival, and Deku would just be with Nezu in the weight room like usual, just lifting some weights. Deku would say that this is pretty bored, and this is when Nezu would say, "I knew you'd say that," and he would literally proceed to grab like a barbell. The barbell itself is like 500, like no, the barbell itself is like 500 tons. Yeah, I don't think he's that strong. The barbell itself is like 30 tons, right? And it has like 100 tons on each side, right? That's how heavy all this stuff is. He would give it to Deku, and Deku would pick it up as he would literally just start bench pressing that, and Deku would start getting a drop of sweat down his face as he would say, "That's better." As Deku would finally start feeling it a little bit more, and man, Deku is he's having a pretty good time. He's finally working out good, and this would lead to Deku basically just talking with Nezu a little bit after all this said and done. Deku would basically look at Nezu and ask him if he should hold back, to which Nezu would tell him, I don't really see why he should. He needs to show people how powerful he is. Maybe by seeing that, crime rate might drop or something like that. And Deku would look at Nezu as he would tell him that All Might's productivity actually went up. So if anything, crime rate will probably stay the same. And at this point, crime rate would be at like 6%, I guess, is like a decent amount. No, wait, 10%. Yeah, I'm gonna go with 10% just because it sounds a little bit more reasonable. That being said, I'm kind of just going to skip on over to the day of the UA Sports Festival where all of the action is going to be taking place. Now, this is when everybody would basically arrive to the UA Sports Festival, and of course we would still have normal scenes up until the point when Deku is told to go up and give the speech. The original canon Bakugo was, but our boy Deku did crush the wait, no. Did Deku even take that exam? I'm pretty sure this version took. Yeah, he did destroy robots. He did. I'm chirping. Or did he or did he not? No. I'm just gonna say he did. And if I said he didn't, retcon that. But yeah. That being said, though, this is when Deku would be walking up to the podium, as he would kind of just be thinking what speech he should make. He has like 100 options off top. Like, does he make people think that they're safe with him? Like, does he cheer everybody up? Does he like say some corny stuff? Like, Deku's just wondering what kind of speech he's gonna go with. And it's at this moment that Deku grabs the microphone, brings it up to his face. Right as he starts, immediately there would be an explosion on the left side of the building. It's at this point that after the explosion would go off, multiple people would fall off of the stands, severely injuring multiple bystanders, and this would have actually ended up killing hundreds of people and injuring even more. This is when, like, out of nowhere from the top, the criminal Mustard would come in, and he would start releasing a toxic gas that would knock people out left and right. It's at this point that Deku would stare over to the crater that was created by the explosion, and it's when immediately Deku would see eye to eye with All For One. As Deku would see him, he'd get a little bit of a smile on his face as he would crack his knuckles and just think that this is his perfect opportunity to show the world how safe they'll be in his hand. Deku would immediately just look at All For One, and before he can even go after him, a bunch of high-end Nomu would just start swarming into the stands. Villains and heroes would just be swarming in there, and people would start running out of the the UA Sports Festival arena. As this is when airplanes would start coming in and camera crew would just coming out of nowhere as they're trying to get every single piece of action. It's at this point that Deku legit just says this will be fun, and he just starts blitzing people. Like, he literally starts blitzing Nomu straight moderating, like being like Madara to everyone. He would literally just be shooting like Nen beams at like the Nomu's heads to obliterate them and not let them regenerate. And like everybody would be going crazy. So it's like pretty much just a giant like SHIT show. Like, it's literally just a giant shit show, right? And you can maybe wondering why I like said SHIT instead of just saying the word. If I was just gonna say it later on, well, I kind of don't want to get a yellow money sign on my video. If you know what that means, then good. If you don't, then someone will probably tell you in the comments if you ask the question. Anyways, this is when everything will basically just be in complete chaos up until finally something different happens. At this point, All Might was blitzing over towards All For One, but before he could do that, 3 Nomus would come over to All Might, and a couple of them would start like literally just grabbing onto his side where he formerly had his injury, and they would begin to start basically attacking and just completely bombarding All Might. Like, they'd be going crazy, to say the least. Now, this is when like All Might would basically start battling them, and he'd actually have a pretty rough time. I mean, like, All Might is healed, but that doesn't mean he's as strong as his prime self. It would take about, let's say, 40 hits each Nomu to defeat, and All Might would definitely be able to do that, but there is 3 All Mights attacking him continuously, so he doesn't exactly get the perfect chance to do that. Now, this is when All For One would look at Deku and just basically be smiling under the mask. Obviously, Deku can't see the smile, and All For One would teleport over to Nezu's location. This is when All For One would pick up Nezu by the throat and literally just hold him out, as he would grab the little microphone and say, "All of you have been living under constant peace, but now I think we should throw a little bit of uncertainty into the mix." And as soon as Deku hears that, he'd be just destroying Nomus. Like, he'd have a smile on his face. He would have been having a blast. And camera crew would have just been seeing Deku just obliterate Nomus left and right. He was, as I said earlier, pulling a Madara on all of the villains. He would have taken out Muscular, Dabi, people like that, just left this easily. He just completely destroyed all those people. And this is when Deku would, in that split second that All For One went on that, Deku would look up and see All For One grabbing Nezu by the neck, as Nezu's kind of struggling to take off his hand, and All For One would begin to tighten his grip on Nezu's neck. And when Deku sees this, you would just see Deku's eyes widen as his rage would overflow, and his Nen would immediately go insane as he would begin to use Ren, and the entire stadium would just be frozen in complete fear to Deku. None of them have a resistance to Nen, plus the fact that Deku is using, like the man is using his maximum output. So all of the people who aren't like incredibly OP, including Nomus, would just drop. Literally the only people who are there to witness what's about to happen is All Might and All For One, who can barely stand. It's at this point that Deku would immediately blitz over to Nezu and just shoot a rage blast right at All For One's head, just completely wiping it off of the map. Like, he literally just destroyed All For One just completely. And this is when Deku would just proceed to go down, as he would continue to basically beat down on All For One's like just already dead body, as he would obliterate any villains that like were slightly hanging onto unconsciousness. Deku would just look around as his anger's overflowing, and he would stare down at All Might, as like Deku just looks at All Might and thinks that it's on sight. But this is when All Might would basically run over to Deku and tell him that it's okay, as Nezu would do the same and just basically be like, "Thank you, Midoriya," As it's at this point that Deku would snap out of it and he would see Nezu's just fine, as Deku would smile and say that he's so glad. As just as I already said, this was all on the news. See, the camera crew was high up into the air, far enough and out of Deku's Ren range, so they weren't affected by any of his Nen aura, and the crew members were actually able to capture that whole entire situation from a very far distance, might I add. After this, people would literally just be like absolutely silenced, and people watching this on their TVs would just be going crazy, saying that that kid is literally going to be the next symbol of peace, and that they have nothing to worry about with somebody like him and All Might on their streets. Like, people would just start tweeting and going crazy. Like, Deku's images and pictures would just go all over the map, and you would just see Deku standing there literally ripped, shirtless, with the UA Sports Festival pants on, just looking up in like a really sexy pose. No homo. And you know, I know a lot of you guys are probably gonna be like, Zether, man, I'm gonna need you to, you know, show me that pass. All right, hear me out here, you know, like, it was for comedic relief. All right, don't come at me. And anyways, this is when Deku would literally proceed to just help with the cleaning out of like all the villains, and about a couple of minutes later, a bunch of the people who were knocked out would wake up. As it's at this point that like literally like the counselors like of Japan would literally have a meeting with each other and decide whether Deku should even be allowed to continue with his hero work. I mean, he literally killed a villain in front of millions on live television, and people are honestly debating whether Deku should or shouldn't be allowed. People who are just bad people, like people who are just ignorant, would be the ones who are like, no, like he killed somebody, nobody deserved the death penalty, heroes are not allowed to, you know, people like that. Like literally Karens would be the ones being like, no, like he shouldn't be allowed to. And everybody else, like including kids, would all just be like, yeah, like what, like let the kid, like the man is overpowered, we need this man. And yeah, everybody would basically just be debating all of what just happened. As at this point that Deku just basically gets told that yeah, he will be allowed to continue, because a majority vote did say that Deku should be let off the hook scot-free, and All Might even testified like with Deku, saying that that was actually one of the most powerful, notorious villains of the world. All, if not most, villains know of All For One's existence. And after that was brought out to the media, you best believe they were going even more crazy. Some high schooler, literal high schooler, freshman, destroyed like the top villain of the world. So yeah, Deku's set. And it's at this point that they would basically go back to class, as Deku would arrive and everybody would just welcome Deku with open arms. They'd be surrounding Deku, just being like, dude, you were awesome. And when Midnight would walk into the class, she would wink at Deku, as Deku just looks at that, and he just kind of looks at Midnight as he smiles a little bit. And it's at this point that she would begin to explain to the class that, you know, she is actually going to be there to help them decide on their hero names. Everybody would decide on the normal hero names that they got in canon, except for Deku. Deku would end up picking the name Meruem, as everybody would be like, yo, why'd you pick Meruem? And Deku would begin to explain that, you know, it just sounds pretty cool. And people would start agreeing with Deku. By the way, Deku's hero costume is actually going to be Meruem's outfit, just because a lot of you guys actually agreed with that, and so that's what I'm going to be going with. That being said, this is when we are now going to have to cover the internship, as after class was over and everybody decided stuff and Deku was basically just waiting after class, Midnight would actually catch Deku in the hallway, as she would ask Deku for his number. Deku would give Midnight his number, and Midnight would just basically smile at Deku, as she would say that, you know, she just needed it just in case anyone ever in trouble. You know, that's really why she got it. And I'm gonna let you guys decide whether I should, you know, whether I should do a little something with Midnight, or I should just keep it no ship and have Midnight actually have good intentions. You guys let me know down below in the comment section, and if I do, trust me, I know a lot of you guys are gonna be like, wait, but it doesn't make sense because this version of Deku isn't like that, like he doesn't care about that. But come on now, bro, like it's Midnight, bro. It's Midnight. So if you want that, make sure to let me know down below. However, this is where I am going to be leaving this part off. The next part will most likely actually be covering the finale of the series, so if you guys are hyped for that, make sure to drop me a like down below, seeing as I am going to be needing 200 likes if you guys want the finale to come out. And with that being said, you guys all know the drill. It has been your boy Zether, and I am out. Peace.